Hello and welcome to this demo of the Ashtree Marine NMEA data collection software.
We're going to create a new session. We'll give the session a name. We'll pick a boat. We've already defined a boat. We're using a sailing software simulation package to make the demo easier today. So we basically save our session. Now we can define a route. We've already got a route we like, which is called Solent Circuit, which has got some waypoints already defined for it. We can add another waypoint, which we do by doing new route waypoint and then picking the one we want from the list. We're after white vodka. Seems appropriate. These are all waypoints which are racing marks in the Solent for those people who recognise these things. So we can select white vodka, press the select button, it takes it back to the route, and when we make it active if we want to, or we can change the sequence, and then when we're happy with that we can save it, and white vodka is now part of our route. It's the last waypoint within our route, so we can go back and now we can look at configuring our boat. So we pick the boat option from the menu. We pick the virtual studio boat that we just looked at on the session. As you can see, we've already defined some configuration options. We can add another one by doing a new boat config item. That will bring up the list of all the possible things we could ever want to imaginably configure. And if they're not there, we can add another one in. So what are we going to add? I think we'll add the main sheet trimmer, because we don't seem to have one of those. So we can record the person who's trimming the main sheet at any given point in time. So you give it a name which is meaningful, and a description which is, well, there you go. Press save and select it, and that will go back and add it to the configuration of our boat once we've given it a value, i.e. the name of the main sheet trimmer. So Fred is trimming our main sheet. So now we've done that, we can think about actually starting and collecting the data. Okay, so the next stage is think about how you're going to get the information out of the systems on your boat. How you do that is very much going to depend on what kind of boat you've got and what kind of instrumentation system you have. Your best bet is probably to talk to a marine electrician. You need to ask somebody to set up an NMEA 0183 interface. There are a lot of different systems provided by different companies. You need to pick the one that's most appropriate for your boat. So, assuming we've defined an interface, we're going to pick a TCP/IP interface from our menu, which we've already defined, and we can start the collector. And as you can see, the messages start and the performance stats starts to be calculated. We have both performance information and navigation information as well. After 5 minutes or so, it starts to collect more information, and the summary data starts to be calculated. Once you've travelled a distance, you'll have meaningful data. You'll have a track of where you've been, and you'll be able to start seeing what kind of performance the boat is actually exhibiting. We can review things such as our course over the ground, the bearing to our next waypoint, and our current lat and long, whether we're going in the correct direction, whether our velocity made good is any good. I think in this case we're going away from where we want to be. And if we want to check that kind of thing, we can actually push it out into Google Earth and visualize on the Google Earth tool what we're actually talking about. So you can see in this one, I think I had my boat set up to go to Horse Sand Fort, but I'm actually going in the wrong direction by a certain degree. You can also look at the data points. Yeah, you see I'm heading for the nav tower and I should be heading somewhere else. So what we really need to do is change our waypoint by using the next waypoint button to tell it that we're actually going to go to the nav tower instead. Of course, you need to remember that if you do that, that's just telling it it's going somewhere. You're not actually changing the direction the boat's going to. So we can review the rolling summary data which has been collected. We can see it in table form like this, which displays all the data points that are being averaged out over the time slots. I think on this test we have 1 minute time slots, so it'll aggregate the data over the 1 minute. So what you get on the right hand side is the actual data, whereas what you get on the left hand side is the summary data. We can swap helms, which is kind of handy. So if I want to change places with John, my name being Bill, I can make John an inactive helm. And Bill the active helm. Swapping these two around, making one active, one inactive. For the next time it refreshes, it should swap from Bill to John as the helm. The refresh interval is basically the same size as the time slot size. But there you go. For instance, another example of doing similar sort of thing, we can take a reef out, or we can reflect the fact we've taken a reef out on the actual boat itself and make a recording. Effectively, you're making a mark in the log to say that you took the reef out at this point in time. So you can then compare the performance of the boat before the reef was taken out and afterwards. So we basically pick up our boat configuration, find the bit where the mainsails are. So you currently have, so we need to set that to be inactive. We've just made the reef, the full mainsail, the active option, and we go back to our configuration information, wait for it to do a refresh in the time slot, wait for it. It tells you how many seconds it is until it will refresh. I think it just did it. And there you go, you can see that we've now got the full mainsail area recorded as being used as opposed to the first reef. We can put a big sail up. Which we don't actually have in our current configuration, so we need to select a new item and add it to our boat configuration. And we seem to have picked an item which isn't in the configuration list of items, so we can add that one in as a new item. We've got maximum asymmetric spinnaker, but I think we'll go for the big yellow spinnaker because the big yellow one's always more interesting. So we'll create a configuration item. Give it a sales type. You can put anything in as the item type, but I guess it makes sense to group them all together. Give it a name, big yellow asymmetric. Give it a description. I need to learn to type faster. More accurately. There you go, the item's there. We've saved it, we brought it back to the configuration, give it a size so it's slightly more meaningful, save that, it appears in your list so it's part of your boat configuration. So you can go back to the monitoring screen, and when it refreshes in roughly 12 seconds we should see the asymmetric spinnaker appear. Wait for it. Bang, go. And there it is. Obviously you've got a dash for the lines, for the time slots where the sail wasn't present. The question I guess then is, are you actually going any faster with that sail up? Well, we can look at the graphs, we can see what information we have, we can see what the wind speed is, we can see how many knots we're making in whatever wind speed there is. We can look at the polar performance. So this is a standard polar chart where you're plotting wind speed against boat speed against the angle you're sailing against the wind. The same sort of information is on the chart table. And then we can compare to what we did last month when we went sailing, and we can see that if you look on the same points in the graph, it may be going a little bit better than we were last month. You get the same information with the tables, and you can compare like with like. So last month we did 7.9 as opposed to 7 knots and 10 knots at 150 degrees, which is alright. So now we can review the data that's been collected and aggregated, because we can actually drill in it and we can actually look at what's been collected and summarised, which is very powerful because it means we can take that out and put that into something like Excel, and you can do your own queries, ask your own questions. For a start off, you have the rolling data, which effectively is the information that's sitting behind the graphs that we've just looked at. You then have the raw NMEA data. Sometimes on a boat you'll get dodgy data coming in on your network, and this actually allows you to weed out anything that's wrong, or you can correct it. You can correct the sentence data. Once you've done that, you'll need to recalculate your summary data. We can talk about that. Oh, we can talk about that now. There is a button on here, so we know that we've just changed the enemy data for a specific session. And we can press the recreate session summary data to recreate all the data that's behind the graphs. That can take a little while if you've got a lot of data. We can also export the data. So we can dump either all the raw NMEA data to a CSV file, or what's probably more useful is to dump the summary data. It creates an individual file for each of the different summary data tabs. So for instance, we could open up the rolling data set in Excel. And you basically get what you see on the screen in terms of numbers. And each one of those will be for, well, in our case, a minute's time slot. And those are the values. So you can draw your own graphs, do your own analysis. Polar data values are exported in the same way. Here you go, find the right option. So you've got effectively the same chart that you're seeing on the screen. But again, you can draw your own graphs if you want to. This is the raw summary data that hasn't been manipulated to, I suppose, it's kind of pivoted. So this is what the raw summary data looks like if you look in the database tables that sit underneath the application. So you've got a row-wise view as opposed to a column-wise view. It's also useful if you want to do further manipulation.